She had 3 seconds to decide, and the wrong choice meant death. What Annie never expected was that the stranger she grabbed in a crowd, the one whose arm felt like iron under her fingers, would play along without a single question. He said he'd never seen her before, but somehow his hands remembered her, and the secret she'd been running from for 2 years was nothing compared to the one he was about to uncover about her. Annie's pulse thundered, copper sharp on her tongue. Maybe they wouldn't notice her? Around her, Ashvale Market was bustling, merchants haggling, carts rumbling over uneven stone. But towards the end, 3 gray cloaks sliced through the chaos, Drevek's trackers. The tallest tilted his head, eyes raking the crowd with an assassin's precision. She could run, try to lose them in the maze of stalls, but they'd cut her off at the east gate like they always did in her nightmares. She could scream for the city guard, but guards in Ashvale took coin from men like Drevek, and she had none left. Or she could do the crazy thing. Her gaze snagged on him. He stood near the edge of a spice merchant, taller than anyone around him, broad through the shoulders in a way that made the space feel smaller. Plain traveler's cloak the color of storm clouds, hood pushed back just enough to show dark hair cropped short on the sides, longer on top, curling slightly against his collar. A jaw that looked like it had been put together for the sole purpose of making women forget what they'd been saying. He was scanning the crowd too, not frantic, but with the calm focus of someone who expected trouble. Annie rushed forward. Her fingers closed around his forearm, hard muscle under worn leather, and she pressed close, voice barely above a breath. "Please, just pretend you know me." He looked down at her hand on his arm. Then he looked at her face. His eyes were the color of deep amber. They moved across her features in a single sweep, reading her the way she imagined generals read maps before a siege. Then his arm slid free of her grip and wrapped around her shoulders instead. "There you are," he said, pitched exactly to carry over the market noise. "I've been looking everywhere." He didn't look at her when he spoke. His eyes stayed on the far end of the row, casual, like he was watching a friend approach. But his body angled, shielding her without making it obvious. His arm was steady, warm through her thin cloak, not tight, but solid enough that the trembling in her knees eased a fraction. Annie made herself breathe, made herself lean into his side the way a woman would lean into a familiar mate. The cedar and cold air scent of him wrapped around her, a welcome relief from the market stink. "How many?" he whispered, low enough that she almost missed it beneath the noise of the market. 3. Gray cloaks. 2 left, 1 coming up behind. He gave a single, barely perceptible nod. His arm didn't tighten. His expression didn't change. He looked, she thought wildly, exactly like a man who had done this before. "Who are you?" But she didn't ask. She didn't have time, because that was the moment the man in the gray cloak closest to her turned his head, and Annie looked directly into the pale eyes of Drevek's best tracker, and knew, with cold certainty, that playing pretend was no longer going to be enough. The stranger's free hand dropped to the small of her back, guiding her sideways behind a tower of woven baskets without breaking his casual posture. "Stay close," he said under his breath. That's when the tracker lunged. Fast. Annie felt the stranger's body coil, muscles locking like a drawn bowstring, and in the next instant he was turning, putting himself fully between her and the advancing man. His hand shot out, caught the tracker's wrist in midair with a crack of bone against bone, and twisted hard. The man's arm wrenched at an impossible angle. A wet choke exploded from his throat as the stranger's elbow slammed into it. Once, brutal, precise. Cartilage crunched. The tracker's eyes bulged. He staggered back, clawing at his crushed windpipe, knees buckling. Before he hit the dirt, The stranger was already pivoting. The second gray cloak charged from the left, knife flashing low for Annie's ribs. The stranger didn't look. He just kicked, boot heel smashing into the man's knee with a sickening pop. The tracker howled, leg folding sideways. He dropped like a fallen tree, knife skittering across the stones. Annie's breath sawed in her throat. Blood roared in her ears. The third tracker froze for one fatal second, then ripped his sword free with a metallic hiss. The stranger didn't blink. He pushed Annie back with one open palm, firm, unyielding, protective, while his other hand whipped a short, blackened blade from beneath his cloak and met the sword coming down. Sparks flew. The tracker was bigger, but the stranger moved like a trained assassin. A feint, a twist, a slash across the forearm that sent the sword spinning into the dirt. Then a single, precise strike to the tracker's temple before the man folded to the ground. The stranger flicked his blade clean with a single snap, sheathed it without looking down at the sprawled bodies. His chest rose and fell once, steady, unhurried. Blood speckled his cuff. His eyes, dark gold, burning low like coals under ash, locked on hers. Run. His hand closed around hers, warm, steady, calloused, and yanked. They bolted. Through the screaming crowd, past overturned baskets and spilled spices, boots pounding stone, hearts slamming against ribs. Annie's lungs burned, her legs shook, but his grip never faltered, firm, steady, like he'd carried women out of worse places before. Behind them, the market erupted into chaos. Ahead, the Valewood forest waited, dark pines swallowing the light. And Annie ran toward it, hand locked in his, wondering if she'd just traded one danger for something far more lethal. They didn't stop until the market's roar dissolved into the hush of wind. Aiden pulled her off the narrow trail, ducking under low branches into the shelter of an ancient fir, whose trunk was wide enough to hide them both. He pressed her back against the rough bark, careful, not crowding, then turned to scan the path they'd just fled down. No shouts, no gray cloaks breaking through the green. Not yet. Only then did he look at her. His chest rose and fell once, steady, controlled, while hers heaved like she'd run for day. A streak of dirt smeared across her cheekbone. He lifted his hand slowly, thumb brushing it away with a gentleness that felt surreal after the violence he'd just unleashed. "You're shaking," he said, voice low. "I'm okay." A faint lift of one dark brow. "You're not." He studied her for a long moment. Those dark gold eyes moved over her face, her tangled hair, the way her arms wrapped tight around herself, as if holding everything in place. Then carefully, he reached for the sleeve she'd shoved up during the fight. The fabric stuck in places, dried blood, hers from a glancing knife in the chaos back at the market. He paused, fingers hovering at the edge of the cloth. "May I?" Annie's throat tightened. She could pull away. She should pull away. But something in the way he waited, patient, unhurried, like he'd stand there all day if that's what she needed, made her nod once, small and sharp. He rolled the sleeve higher with slow, careful movements, exposing the cut fully. It wasn't deep, clean edges, already starting to clot, but fresh enough that the skin around it was angry red, swollen at the edges. His thumb brushed the uninjured skin just above the wound, barely a touch, but Annie sucked in a breath anyway. Aiden's jaw tightened. Not at the cut itself. His eyes had already flicked past it, tracing upward along the newly bared skin of her upper arm. Old bruises bloomed there, layered, ugly, deep purple fading to sickly yellow-green at the edges, the unmistakable imprint of fingers dug in hard, the shape of a hand that had wanted to leave marks. Her sleeve had hidden them perfectly until now. Annie felt the moment he saw them. His thumb froze against her skin. His breathing changed, deeper, slower, like he was forcing calm through sudden white-hot rage. Shame slammed into her like a fist. She jerked her arm back, eyes dropping to the forest floor. Heat crawled up her neck. She hated how small she felt in that second, how the bruises still owned her even when the man who'd made them was miles away. But Aiden didn't pull away. Instead, he stepped closer, just enough that she could feel the heat radiating off him, and slowly, deliberately, lifted his other hand to cup her chin. 2 fingers, light as breath, tilting her face up until she had no choice but to meet his gaze. "These aren't your shame to carry, Annie." Her name in his mouth, soft, sure, like he'd known it forever, stole the air from her lungs. Annie's eyes snapped to his. "How do you know my name?" She hadn't told him. Not in the market, not while running. The question came out sharper than she meant. Half accusation, half fear. Aiden's gaze flickered, just for a second. Something passed behind his eyes, something guarded, shadowed. His jaw tightened, the muscle ticking once before he smoothed it away. "I'll tell you later," he said quietly. "When we're safe." She searched his face, those sharp features, the faint scar along his cheekbone she hadn't noticed until now. It should have frightened her. Instead, it only deepened the strange pull in her chest, the way her wolf pressed closer to the surface, curious instead of wary. "And your name?" He exhaled through his nose, a small sound that might have been relief. "Aiden." No title, no surname, no elaboration. But the way he said it felt like handing her the first piece of himself. His thumb resumed its slow circles over her knuckles, grounding, deliberate. The touch sent warmth curling up her arm, chasing away the last of the market's chill. "We can't stay here long," he said. "They'll bring more. Men like that don't stop." Annie felt the shift in him, the protective edge sharpening, his body angling toward the path they'd come from, ears tuned to every rustle in the underbrush. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere they won't follow." The corner of his mouth lifted, just a fraction, almost a smile, but shadowed with something darker. "Unless you'd rather I leave you here." Annie looked up at him, blood still flecking his cuff, blade sheathed but still warm at his hip, amber eyes steady and burning low. Her wolf, silent, buried, starved for 2 long years, stirred again. Not in fear this time. In answer. She couldn't help it. Her gaze dropped for one reckless heartbeat to his mouth. The faint scar at the corner of his lower lip, the way it curved when he almost smiled, the controlled tension there like he was holding back 1,000 things he wanted to say. Or do. Her wolf surged forward without warning, voice a low, smoky purr inside her head. Bite him. Heat slammed through her like a struck match, cheeks flaming, pulse thudding low and insistent, breath snagging on a tiny, startled inhale. Aiden's nose flared, his eyes darkened, pupils blowing wide in an instant, and his breathing changed. A low rumble vibrated in his chest, so faint she might have imagined it if her wolf hadn't answered with a soft, eager huff inside her. Annie's stomach flipped. Sudden, mortifying nervousness crashed through her. Had he heard her wolf? Heat flooded her face hotter. She jerked her eyes away from his mouth, staring at the pine needles instead. She changed the subject fast, voice barely above a whisper. "I'm coming with you." Aiden exhaled. Slow, controlled, like he was forcing air past the growl still lodged in his throat. He searched her face for one long beat, eyes still dark, still burning, then nodded. He tugged her hand gently, leading her deeper into the Valewood. Shadows swallowed the path ahead, thick with pine and secrets, and the low, watchful eyes of wolves that had begun to circle at a distance. Annie, heart pounding, skin still tingling where he'd touched her, wolf awake and hungry, followed him into the dark. And for the first time in 2 years, she didn't feel like prey. The Valewood forest swallowed them whole. The path narrowed, pine needles muffling their footsteps until the only sounds were their breathing and the occasional snap of a twig under Aiden's boot. Annie kept pace behind him, hands still in his. Every time she thought to pull away, her wolf protested. They walked for hours. The sun filtered through the canopy in thin, golden spears that grew dimmer with each mile. Aiden moved with the certainty of someone who'd walked these trails in the dark. He never hesitated at forks, never glanced back to check for pursuit. But his shoulders stayed tense, head cocked slightly, listening. By late afternoon, her legs ached and her lungs burned from the cold, thin air. Aiden finally slowed near a small clearing ringed by massive firs. A shallow stream cut through the mossy ground. Sunlight glittered on the water like scattered coins. He stopped, scanned the perimeter once more, then turned to her. "We rest here. 1 hour, then we move again." Annie nodded, too tired to argue. She sank onto a fallen log, knees pulled up, arms wrapped around them. Aiden crouched by the stream, filled a small metal canteen, then brought it to her. Their fingers brushed as she took it. The contact sent another spark through her. He didn't sit. He stood a few feet away, back to a tree, arms crossed, eyes on the path they'd come from. But his gaze kept sliding back to her, every few seconds, like he couldn't help it. "How do you know these woods so well?" she asked quietly. "I've lived in them longer than most people live anywhere." She waited. "I was exiled. Years ago. The pack I was born to couldn't keep me, and I couldn't stay, so I made the Valewood mine instead." "Pack?" The word slipped out before she could stop it. Aiden's eyes met hers, steady, unreadable. "Wolves, shifters, whatever you want to call us." Annie's heart stuttered. She'd suspected, felt it in the way he moved, the lethal grace, the way his scent wrapped around her like a claim, but hearing it aloud still hit hard. Then relief flooded in, warm and sudden, loosening the knot in her chest she hadn't realized was there. Her wolf perked up, voice clearer now, cheeky and warm inside her head. "See? He's too hot to be human. Told you." "So, you're one of them," she whispered. "I'm more than one of them." He paused, jaw working. "I was their alpha once." The words hung there, heavy with old weight. But then Aiden straightened, just a fraction, shoulders rolling back, chest puffing out, the faint swell of pride beneath the ribs even as his eyes stayed shadowed. For one heartbeat he looked young, boyish almost, like someone who'd once led a pack with nothing but heart and teeth and the unshakable belief that he could keep them safe. Then the moment passed. His gaze dropped to the ground between them, lashes casting long shadows. "Is that why you helped me? Because you know what it's like to run from someone who thinks they own you?" Aiden's gaze softened. "Something like that." She looked down at the canteen in her hands. "And my name? How did you know it?" He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he pushed off the tree, crouched in front of her so they were eye level. "I've been tracking Drevek for months. Not for you. For him." Word reached the packs that he was hunting a woman with latent blood, moonbloom blood, rare, dangerous in the wrong hands. "I didn't know it was you until you grabbed me in the market and your scent hit me." Annie's breath caught. "Moonbloom? Your mother never told you?" "She died when I was 16. Fever. She always said I had a gift. Healing touch. Plants would bloom faster when I was near. But she told me to hide it. Said people would call me witch. Or worse." Aiden nodded slowly. Moonbloom isn't just healing. It's the bloodline that keeps the old packs alive, the ancient bonds between wolf packs and the land itself. Your gift can mend what's broken. Scorched earth, fractured territories, even the land's memory of old curses. A single moonbloom can tip the balance of power. That's why Lord Veyra wants you. He paused, eyes steady on hers. Drevek's been feeding him information for coin. Names, sightings, your movements. That's how I knew yours. I've read every report he sent. Annie suddenly felt cold despite the sun on her back. So I'm bait? No. Aiden's voice was low, fierce. You're the key they're trying to steal. I'm not letting that happen. She searched his face. Why does this matter to you? Aiden exhaled slowly through his nose, like he was steadying something inside himself. His eyes held hers, amber burning low. Because the second your fingers closed on my arm, my wolf answered, like it recognized you, like it had been waiting. Annie's throat tightened. She remembered the hum in her chest, the heat, her wolf's shameless ask. Bite him. Aiden's eyes darkened, pupils flaring wide for one unguarded second, and a low rumble vibrated deep in his chest, like hunger held on a very short leash. His free hand flexed at his side, fingers curling tight, then releasing, as if he were fighting the urge to pull her closer, to press her against the nearest tree and show her exactly how badly he wanted her. Annie's heart hammered. She could almost feel the heat rolling off him in waves, the barely leashed want that made her own wolf whine softly in answer. But she didn't move closer. Drevek's voice echoed in her head, cold, mocking, familiar. You think you're wild? You think you're strong? He'd said it the first time he'd forced her wolf down, the night he'd pinned her wrists until they bruised, whispering that her instincts were dirty, dangerous, something to be ashamed of. After that, every time heat tried to rise, she'd choked it back, terrified it would prove him right, terrified it would make her lose control again, terrified she'd end up owned instead of wanted. So even now, with Aiden standing there burning for her, she held back, arms wrapped tighter around herself, eyes on the ground. Aiden noticed. When he spoke, his voice was softer, like he was handling something fragile. I'm not him. I won't take what isn't given. I won't make you feel small for wanting. But I feel it too, Annie. Every damn second. And it's taking everything I've got not to show you how much. She swallowed hard. Tears pricked, hot, sudden, not from fear, but from the ache of being seen without being judged. Her wolf huffed softly inside her head, impatient, but gentler now. He's not Drevek. He's ours. Annie lifted her eyes to his. Aiden was watching her, still dark-eyed, still tense, but the hunger had been leashed again, tucked behind that steady, patient amber. She took one small step forward. Not much, just enough to close half the gap. I know, she whispered. I just need time. He nodded once, slow, solemn. Come on, you look hungry, let's eat. They ate in silence, dried meat and hard bread from his pack. After a few minutes, Annie broke the quiet. What's the plan? She asked softly. We can't just keep running forever. Aiden's gaze flicked to her, quick, assessing, then back to the forest. He chewed slowly, like he was buying time to choose his words. We head north, he said finally. There's an old stronghold in the high ridges, Silver Pine Hold. It's been abandoned since my exile, but the wards still hold. Stone walls, hidden entrances, defensible. If we make it there, we can breathe, rest, figure out what Veyra knows and how fast Drevek's selling you out. Annie swallowed the last bite of bread. It sat heavy in her stomach. And then? Aiden's jaw tightened. Then we decide if we fight or disappear. He paused, eyes darkening. Once we reach Silver Pine, I can call in what's left of the pack that never accepted my exile. Not many, maybe a dozen loyal ones, but enough to hold the line, enough to give us a chance. Annie studied him. You're risking everything for someone you just met. Aiden met her gaze. You're not a stranger, Annie. Not to my wolf. Not to me. Aiden kept watch while she rested, back against the log, eyes half closed. Exhaustion pulled at her, but sleep came in fragments, snatches of dreams that felt too vivid, too real. In the first one, she was running through the Valewood again, but alone. Moonlight poured through the branches. Her wolf was close, fur brushing her skin, heartbeat syncing with hers. Then the forest opened into a glade, and Aiden was there, shirtless, chest rising and falling, golden eyes glowing in the dark. He didn't speak, just stepped forward, slow, deliberate. His hand lifted to her cheek, thumb tracing the line of her jaw the way he had earlier. But in the dream, she didn't flinch. She leaned into it. Her wolf surged, pressing forward, and Annie felt her own lips part on a soft gasp as his mouth brushed hers. Once, testing. Then again, deeper. His growl vibrated against her tongue. Her hands slid up his chest. She woke with a start, heart racing, skin flushed, a low ache between her thighs she hadn't felt in years. Aiden was crouched nearby, eyes on her. You were dreaming, he said quietly. Annie sat up fast, cheeks burning. It was nothing. He didn't push, just handed her the canteen again, but his nostrils flared slightly, like he could scent the change in her. The air between them felt thicker now, charged, like a storm gathering on the ridge ahead. And somewhere in the trees behind them, a wolf howl answered, distant, low, warning. Danger was coming. They moved on quickly as dusk fell. Aiden was careful not to touch her unless it was necessary, guiding her over a fallen log, steadying her when the trail grew steep. But every brush of fingers sent sparks skittering across her skin. Every time their eyes met, the pull tightened. Her wolf grew bolder. It spoke more often now, short, hungry thoughts that made her flush and look away. Run with him. Taste him. Annie shoved the voice down. On the third night, they camped in a shallow cave overlooking a narrow valley. Aiden built a small fire, smokeless, hidden from sight. Annie sat close to the warmth, knees drawn up, staring into the flames. Aiden sat across from her, sharpening his blade with slow, rhythmic strokes. The scrape of whetstone on steel was almost soothing. You're quiet tonight, he said. She shrugged, thinking. About? Drevek. What he'll do when he realizes I'm gone for good. Aiden's hand stilled. He won't get the chance to do anything. She looked at him. Really looked. The firelight carved shadows under his eyes. For the first time, he looked tired. You said you were exiled. What happened? He stared into the flames for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was rougher, like the words had been locked away so long they hurt coming out. The blood right is the old way alphas used to claim the crown. Not just power. The whole pack's strength, the land's loyalty, the moon's favor. It all flows through one vein. You drink from the heart of the last alpha. You spill your own blood into the ritual circle. You bind every wolf in the pack to your will, whether they want it or not. No choice. No mercy. He paused. His fingers flexed against his knee, knuckles whitening. I was supposed to do it the night my father died. He'd been dying slow, poisoned by rivals who wanted the right for themselves. He begged me to finish it, said it was the only way to keep the pack from tearing itself apart, said if I didn't, The blood would be on my hands anyway. Aiden's gaze lifted to hers, amber gone dull, hollowed out by memory. I refused. I looked at him, my father, the man who taught me how to lead, how to fight, how to protect, and I saw what the right had done to him. The way his eyes were empty. I couldn't become that. I wouldn't. He exhaled, breath shaky. So, I walked away, left him there to die alone, left the pack screaming my name, calling me coward, traitor, weak. They cast me out before his body was cold. Said I'd doomed them all. Said I'd never lead again. Annie felt the ache in her own chest mirror his. She could see it, the boy he'd been, standing at the edge of that ritual circle, choosing mercy over power and losing everything for it. She reached out, slow, careful, and rested her palm over his clenched fist. Aiden didn't pull away, his fingers uncurled just enough for hers to slip between them. I still hear him sometimes, my father, begging, not for the right, for me to stay, to save him from what he'd become. And I didn't. Tears stung Annie's eyes, not just for him, but for the weight he carried, the guilt that had carved lines around his mouth, the sadness that lived behind every steady glance. She squeezed his hand. You didn't doom them. You chose not to become a monster. Aiden's throat worked. He looked down at their joined hands, his scarred, hers still bearing faint yellow ghosts of old bruises. Maybe, he murmured. But it cost me everything. The pack, my home, the right to call myself Alpha. He lifted his eyes to hers again. Until you grabbed my arm in that market, until my wolf woke up and said your name like it had been waiting to say it forever. Then I realized, maybe I didn't lose the right to lead. Maybe I just hadn't found the right reason yet. Annie's breath caught. Tears slipped free, one, then another, silent tracks down her cheeks. Aiden reached up and brushed them away with his thumb. I'm not asking you to fix me, he said quietly. I'm just not willing to lose you too. Not when I finally feel like I could be something more than the man who walked away. Annie leaned forward, slow, tentative, and rested her forehead against his. Their breaths mingled in the small space between them. You're already more, she whispered. You always were. Aiden closed his eyes. A single shudder ran through him, like the last wall he'd built around his heart had, finally cracked under the weight of her words. She tilted her head, just a fraction, so her nose brushed the bridge of his. His breath hitched, warm against her lips, close enough now that she could taste cedar and pine on the exhale, could feel the faint tremor in his jaw where it nearly touched hers. Her wolf stirred, soft, eager. Kiss him. Please. Just once. Annie's lips parted on a shaky inhale. She felt the heat of his mouth so near hers, like a promise held one heartbeat away. Her free hand lifted, slow, trembling, until her fingertips grazed the line of his jaw, tracing the stubble there, feeling the muscle flex under her touch. Aiden's eyes opened, pupils blown so wide the gold was only a thin ring. He looked at her mouth like it was the only thing in the world that mattered. Annie, he whispered, voice raw, wrecked. She closed the last inch. Their lips brushed, soft, tentative. A question more than a kiss. Aiden froze for half a second, breath catching sharp, in his throat, then answered. He tilted his head, pressing back gently. Just the slow, aching slide of his mouth over hers. Warm, careful, like he was afraid she'd vanish if he moved too fast. His hand slid from hers to cup the back of her neck, fingers threading into her hair, thumbs stroking the sensitive skin just below her ear. Annie melted into it. A small, involuntary sound escaped her, half sigh, half whimper, and Aidan answered with a low, broken groan that vibrated against her lips. The kiss deepened, just enough, his tongue brushing the seam of her mouth in silent ask. She opened for him. He took the invitation slow, tasting her like she was something sacred, something he'd waited years to find. Heat bloomed low in her belly, soft, insistent, but it wasn't frantic this time. It felt wanted, chosen. They broke apart at the same moment, both breathing hard, noses brushing. Aidan's eyes were glassy, dark with want and wonder. His thumb kept stroking her neck, slow, soothing circles, like he couldn't bear to stop touching her. I've wanted to do that since the market. Annie's lips curved. Me too. He exhaled a soft, almost laugh, relief and ache all tangled together. His forehead pressed harder against hers, like he was trying to imprint the moment into his bones. We should stop, before I forget how to be careful with you. Annie nodded, small, reluctant, but didn't pull away. Just a little longer. Aidan's eyes fluttered closed again. They stayed like that until the fire burned low. On the fourth night, she dreamed of him again, naked in moonlight, her hands on his skin, his mouth on her throat, growling her name. She woke slick between her thighs, body aching, wolf howling inside her. The heat had begun. It started slow, a flush under her skin, a restless energy that made her fidget, made her hyper-aware of Aidan's every move. The way his shirt clung to his shoulders when he walked, ahead. The low timbre of his voice when he spoke. The scent of him, cedar, pine, wild musk, that made her wolf pace and whine. By midday, she was burning. They stopped at a small mountain stream to refill canteens. Aidan knelt to fill his. Annie stood behind him, trying to breathe through the wave of need that crashed over her. He froze. Head snapped up, nostrils flared. He turned slowly. Annie. His voice was rough, strained. She wrapped her arms around herself. I'm okay. Let's keep going. You're not. He rose, slow, careful. Your scent, it's changed. Heat flooded her face. It's starting. The heat. My wolf, it's been suppressed so long. Now it's... Aidan's eyes darkened. A low growl rumbled in his chest. Possessive, pained. He took one step toward her, then stopped. Fists clenched at his sides. I can smell it, he said hoarsely. It's strong. Too strong. Annie's knees trembled. The ache between her thighs sharpened into need. She wanted to step into him, press against him, let him take the edge off. But fear flickered too. Drevek's voice in her head, calling her wildness ugly, dangerous. Aidan read it on her face. He breathed out hard. Come here. She hesitated. I won't touch you unless you ask, he said, but I can help. Let me ground you. She nodded, small, shaky. He sank to his knees in front of her, eye level with her waist, and rested his forehead against her stomach. His hands settled on her hips, firm, steadying. Breathe with me, he murmured against her shirt. In through your nose, out slow. Annie closed her eyes and inhaled his scent, deep, grounding, then exhaled. His thumbs stroked small circles over her hip bones. Focus on my hands, he said. On the pressure. On my voice. She did. The heat still burned, but it eased, just enough to breathe. Her wolf settled, whining softly but no longer frantic. After several long minutes, Aidan lifted, his head. His eyes were gold again, bright, fierce. Better? She nodded, voice small. Thank you. He rose slowly, brushed a strand of hair from her face. We'll get through this together, he said. Annie swallowed. I don't want to be a burden. You're not. His thumb traced her cheekbone. "You're the only thing that feels like home in years." They moved on. The heat came in waves after that, rising at night, easing during the day. Aiden never pushed, but he stayed close, slept beside her under the stars, arm around her waist when she shivered, held her through the worst surges, hands on her back, voice low and steady, letting her ride it out. Danger shadowed them too. On the 6th day, they crossed a ridge and spotted smoke, thin, deliberate, rising from a clearing below. Aiden went still. "Scouts," he said quietly. "Vera's men. They're closer than I thought." Annie's stomach dropped. "What do we do?" "We have to go around. Quiet. Fast." They backtracked, moving silent through the underbrush. But the scouts were good, better than Drevek's trackers. By dusk, Annie heard footsteps behind them, too close. Aiden pulled her into a thicket, pressed her against a tree trunk, body shielding hers. "Stay here," he whispered. "Don't move." He slipped away, shadow among shadows. Minutes stretched. Annie's heart hammered. Then she heard it. Growls, steel clashing, a choked cry cut short. Aiden returned. Blood streaked his knuckles, not all his. A shallow cut sliced across his left forearm, red welling fast, dripping down the inside of his wrist in slow, dark beads. He moved like nothing had happened, steady, controlled. But his breathing was heavier than before, chest rising and falling in short, controlled pulls. "3 down," he said. "They won't report back." Annie reached instinctively for his arm. She pressed her palm flat over the cut, skin to skin, warm against the cool night air. The moment she touched him, something inside her flared awake. Warm light bloomed under her hand, soft gold, like dawn breaking through fog. It spread from her palm, seeping into the gash like liquid sunlight. The edges of the wound knit together before her eyes, flesh drawing closed, blood retreating, skin smoothing over. Aiden exhaled sharply. "Your gift. It's stronger now." She looked up at him. "Because of you. Because my wolf's waking up." He cupped her face. "Then let it wake. I love seeing your strength." That night, her heat crested. She woke feverish, skin too tight, body aching, wolf howling inside her. Aiden was already awake, sitting up, eyes glowing in the dark. "Annie." The sound of her name in his rough voice sent a fresh wave of heat crashing through her. She didn't think. She crawled to him, instinct, pure need, until her knees bracketed his thighs, and she pressed herself flush against his chest. His arms came around her, instantly, strong, careful, but trembling with the effort of restraint. She could feel every hard line of him, the solid wall of his chest, the rapid thud of his heart, the unmistakable ridge of his arousal pressing against her lower belly through their clothes. A low, broken growl rumbled out of him, his hands flexed on her back, fingers digging in just enough to make her gasp. "I've got you," he murmured against her hair. She buried her face in the crook of his neck. His scent flooded her, cedar, pine, musk, salt and skin, and raw male want. It was overwhelming. Her wolf whined, needy, shameless, hips rocking forward instinctively, grinding against him. Aiden sucked in a sharp breath. His hips jerked up once, uncontrolled, before he locked every muscle in place. His growl deepened, vibrating through her bones. She lifted her head. Their mouths were inches apart. She could feel his ragged exhales on her lips, taste the heat of him. He tilted her chin up with shaking fingers. "Tell me what you need." She kissed him. Hard. Desperate. Hands fisting in his shirt, yanking him closer. Her tongue swept into his mouth, and he met her with a groan that sounded torn from his soul. His hands slid down her back, cupping her hips, pulling her tighter against him so she could feel how badly he wanted her. She rocked again, slow, deliberate, and he bucked up into her with a choked curse, the friction sending sparks behind her eyes. His arousal throbbed against her core through the layers of fabric, hot, insistent, straining. Aiden tore his mouth away, panting, wild-eyed. His forehead slammed against hers, breath sawing in and out. "You're killing me," she whimpered, chasing his lips again. He let her have one more kiss, then pulled back with visible effort. His hands gripped her hips hard, stopping her movements, fingers digging in like he was anchoring himself to sanity. "Not tonight," he rasped. "Not when it's heat driving you. I need you to choose me freely." Annie's breath hitched. She could feel herself clenching around nothing, aching for him. Aiden's eyes fluttered closed. A shudder ran through his whole body, muscles locked so tight she thought he might snap. "When it's just us, no fever, just you choosing me. I'll give you everything, everything I've been holding back since the market." He opened his eyes, dark, desperate but steady. He eased her down until she was curled against his chest, legs tangled with his. One hand stroked her back in long, slow sweeps, the other cradled the back of her head, fingers threading through her hair. "Sleep. Let it burn through. I'm not going anywhere." She clung to him, face buried in his throat, thighs still trembling, core still throbbing, but the frantic edge dulled under his steady touch, his low voice murmuring nonsense until exhaustion finally dragged her under. They slept tangled together in the shallow cave. The heat had finally broken into a gentle simmer, leaving her exhausted but safe. Aiden's breathing had evened out at last, deep, steady, though one hand stayed splayed protectively over her lower back, thumb resting against the dip of her spine. They were both asleep when the ambush came. No warning, no distant howl, just the sudden, brutal snap of crossbow bolts whistling through the cave mouth. One buried itself in the stone wall inches from Aiden's head. Rock chips sprayed across them. Aiden woke fighting. He rolled Annie under him in one fluid motion, shielding her body with his, while his blade was already in hand. Growls ripped from his throat, pure wolf, as 4 attackers poured through the narrow entrance, black leather-clad, silver wolf skull helmets glinting in the dying firelight. Vera's elite, not scouts, but killers. Aiden shoved Annie behind the low rock shelf at the back of the cave, then launched himself at the first man. Blade met sword in a ringing clash. He twisted, slashed, took the attacker down with a brutal throat strike before the body even hit the ground. But there were too many. The second came from the side, claws extended, shifter fast. Aiden pivoted, taking 4 deep gashes across his ribs instead of letting them reach Annie. He snarled, feral, furious, and drove his elbow into the man's temple, dropping him instantly. The third and fourth flanked him. Aiden fought like a storm, brilliant, lethal, but he kept turning his back to her, shielding her with his body every time an opening appeared. A blade sliced deep into his thigh. Claws raked his shoulder. He staggered, once, hard, blood pooling under him dark and fast, but he didn't stop. He roared, low and guttural, and took the third man down with a vicious upward slash. The last attacker hesitated, seeing the bodies, the blood, the alpha who refused to fall. Aiden planted himself between Annie and the man, swaying now, breathing ragged, blade dripping. His leg buckled once, but he caught himself, stance wide despite the pain. "Go," he rasped over his shoulder. "Run, Annie, now." Annie shook her head, tears burning. "No." She stepped out. The attacker's eyes locked on her, recognizing the moonbloom they'd been sent to take. He lunged. Aiden met him midair, taking the full force of claws across his back so Annie wouldn't feel them. He grunted, pain raw, guttural, then twisted, using the opportunity to drive his blade into the man's side. They went down together. The attacker twitched once, then stilled. Aiden collapsed to his knees, soaked from multiple wounds. His breathing was wet, labored. He looked up at her, eyes glassy, but still fierce. "Run," he managed. "Please." Annie dropped beside him, hands already glowing gold before she even touched him. She pressed both palms to the deepest wound, across his back, pouring everything she had into the light. Warmth flooded out, bright, desperate, sealing torn flesh, knitting, muscle, staunching the flood of blood. She felt it drain from her, dizzying, pulling at her core like a tide going out, but she didn't stop. Aiden's hand came up, weak, shaking, and covered hers. "Enough," he rasped. "You'll hurt yourself." She shook her head, tears falling onto his skin. "I'm not losing you." The light flared brighter, almost blinding, then faded. The wounds closed. His breathing steadied. Color crept back into his face. Aiden exhaled, long, shuddering, then sagged against her, heavy with exhaustion. Annie held him, forehead pressed to his shoulder, shaking from head to toe. She felt the moment his body gave out. His grip loosened. His head dropped to her neck. His breathing slowed, deep, even, the kind of sleep that only comes when the body has nothing left. He was out cold. Annie stayed frozen for a long minute, listening to the steady rise and fall of his chest against hers. The cave was quiet except for the faint drip of water, somewhere deeper in the rock, and the soft crackle of the dying fire. His scent wrapped around her, and her wolf whined softly. She eased him down slowly until he was lying on the thin bedroll, head pillowed on her folded cloak. His face looked younger in sleep, lines smoothed out, mouth slack, the constant tension gone. One hand stayed loosely curled around her wrist, like he still wouldn't let go. Tears burned her eyes. She stared at him, memorizing the faint scar on his cheek, the way his lashes fanned against his skin. The man who'd fought for her, shielded her, held her through the worst of her heat without taking a single thing she wasn't ready to give. The man she was about to break, because staying would kill him, because her blood, her heat, her hunted life would keep drawing death to his door until it finally won. She leaned down, slow, trembling, and pressed her lips to his forehead. Soft, lingering. A goodbye he wouldn't hear. "I'm sorry," she whispered, against his skin. "I love you. That's why I have to go." Her wolf howled inside her, low, heartbroken, but Annie didn't let it out. She stood. Legs shaking, Annie tore a strip from the hem of her shirt, found a sharp stone near the fire, scratched the words with trembling fingers. "I won't be the chain that pulls you down." She tied the scrap to the hilt of his dagger, left it beside him where he'd see it the second he woke. Then she backed away, step by step, until she reached the cave mouth. She looked back one last time. Aiden slept on, blood still drying on his shirt, hand half reaching for the empty space she'd left. Annie's chest cracked open. She turned and ran into the pale gray dawn, into the cold ridge wind, into the dark she'd spent 2 years trying to escape. Her wolf howled inside her, grieving, furious, but Annie didn't stop. She couldn't, because if she did, she'd crawl back to him. Annie ran until her lungs burned and her legs gave out. The ridge sloped down into a misty valley, the forest thinning into open scrubland. She collapsed behind a boulder, gasping, tears mixing with sweat on her face. Her wolf paced restlessly inside her, whining, snapping, urging her to turn back. "He's ours. We need him." "No," Annie whispered through gritted teeth. "We can't." She forced herself up, kept moving north, away from Silverpine Hold, away from Aiden. The dawn light turned golden, warming the air, but the cold in her chest didn't lift. Every step felt like tearing off a piece of herself. Memories flashed, his hands on her hips during the heat, his voice murmuring through the fever, his body shielding hers in the cave. The way he'd looked at her like she was the only light in his dark world. By midday, exhaustion slowed her to a stagger. Her stomach growled. She'd left her pack behind in the cave, too frantic to think. Water from a trickle stream quenched her thirst, but hunger gnawed. She pressed on, following the valley's curve, hoping to reach Eldrath, the neutral city where shifters and humans mingled, where she could suppress her wolf and disappear again. She heard the horses first, hooves thundering on hard earth. 3 riders crested the hill above her, gray cloaks flapping like vulture wings. Drevek led them, his face twisted in a smile that made her blood run cold. "Annie," he called, voice smooth as poisoned honey. "You always were a fast runner, but not fast enough." She bolted, instinct kicking in, but her legs felt like lead. Drevek's horse cut her off, his boot slamming into her shoulder. She hit the ground hard, wind knocked out, her vision blurred for a second, dark spots dancing at the edges. He dismounted, knelt beside her, his hand fisted in her hair, yanking her head back so she had to look at him. Familiar face, handsome once, now ugly with triumph. "You thought you could leave me? Thought some rogue wolf could keep you?" Her wolf snarled inside her, fierce, furious, but her body was too weak to shift. Drevek laughed, low and mocking. "Still got that fire, huh? Good. Vera likes them feisty, makes the rite more potent." He dragged her up, bound her wrists with rough rope. The other 2 riders, his trackers, watched with dead eyes. Drevek mounted again, hauling her up in front of him like a sack. His arm clamped around her waist, possessive, bruising. "You're mine, Annie. Always were. Vera's paying top coin for your blood, but after he's done, you're coming home with me." She twisted, spitting in his face. He backhanded her. Blood filled her mouth. "That's the wildness I broke once. I'll break it again." They rode hard through the day, the landscape shifting from valley to barren hills, then to the black stone spires of Vera's citadel. Obsidian walls rose like teeth from the earth, ringed by moats of foul water. Guards in silver wolf-skull helmets patrolled the ramparts, eyes glowing faintly, shifters bound to Vera's will. Drevek dragged her through iron gates, down torchlit halls that reeked of smoke and decay. They stopped in a chamber deep underground, cold stone, chains dangling from the ceiling, an altar carved with lunar runes. Lord Vera waited there, tall and gaunt in black robes embroidered with gold threads. His eyes were pale yellow, slitted like a snake's, face scarred from old rites. "So this is the Moonbloom," Vera's voice echoed. He circled her, fingers trailing her arm. She jerked away, but Drevek shoved her forward. "Pretty and powerful. I can smell it on you, the blood that binds the packs." Annie lifted her chin, despite the fear churning in her gut. "What do you want from me?" Vera smiled, thin, cruel. "Everything. The lunar packs, the ancient bonds that tie packs to the land, to the moon, are fracturing. Wolves grow wild, rebellious. The rite will fix that. Your Moonbloom blood will fuel it. I'll drain you, force every shifter to kneel. No more free will in mating, in leading, until all power flows. To me." He leaned closer, breath foul. "You want to know the twist, Little Bloom? The rite needs a fated mate's bond to seal it. Your ex here," he nodded at Drevek, "thinks he's that mate, but we both know he's not. That rogue alpha you ran with, Aiden, he's the one. His blood would make the rite unbreakable. He'll come for you. And when he does, I'll have you both." Annie's heart seized. The twist landed like a blade. Drevek laughed. "Aiden's a ghost. Exiled. Weak. He won't come." But Vera's eyes glittered. "He will. Love makes fools of us all." They chained her to the altar, cold iron biting her wrists. Drevek lingered, fingers brushing her cheek. "I'll see you after," he promised, "when Vera's done playing." Annie spat blood at his feet. "I'll see you dead first." He backhanded her again, harder this time. Stars exploded behind her eyes. Darkness tugged at her edges. Vera waved him away. "Leave us. The rite begins at moonrise." The door slammed shut. Vera began, chanting, low, rhythmic, runes glowing on the altar. Annie tugged at the chains, wolf snarling inside her, but the iron was warded, magic dampening. Her healing light flickered weakly, then died. The chamber grew colder as night fell. Moonlight slanted through a high grate, silver and mocking. Suddenly chaos erupted above, howls, shouts, steel clashing. Vera's chant faltered. His eyes narrowed before a wicked smile spread. "So soon?" The door burst open. A guard staggered in, bloodied, gasping. "The exiled king, here, with wolves," Vera snarled. "Hold them!" But the howls grew louder, closer. Annie's wolf surged, hope flaring. "He's here!" The chamber shook with the impact of bodies above. Dust rained from the ceiling. Vera grabbed a ritual dagger, curved, black-bladed, and stalked toward her. "If I can't have the full rite, your blood will do for now." He raised the blade. Annie twisted, chains rattling, wolf snarling helpless rage. The door exploded. Aiden stormed. Through, black fur rippling over his half-shifted form, claws extended, eyes blazing gold. Behind him, a dozen wolves poured in, loyal ones, furred and fierce, tearing into the guards that rushed to meet them. Vera whirled. Aiden lunged, pure alpha fury, slamming into Vera like a thunderbolt. They crashed to the ground in a tangle of limbs and snarls. Vera shifted mid-fall, bones cracking, fur sprouting, into a massive gray wolf with a scarred muzzle. The fight was brutal, claws raking, teeth snapping, blood spraying across the stone. Aiden was faster, stronger, but Vera was cunning, darting low, aiming for his recently healed wounds. A slash reopened Aiden's thigh. He roared, pinning Vera and raking claws across his flank. Drevek burst in then, flanked by two trackers, eyes locking on Annie. "She's mine." He charged the altar, knife raised high, blade catching the torchlight in a wicked flash. Annie's chains rattled as she jerked against them, heart slamming, fear and fury twisting together in her chest. The iron bit into her wrists, the wards humming cold against her skin, holding her wolf down like a hand clamped over her mouth. Aiden, still locked in his fight with Vera across the chamber, caught the movement from the corner of his eye. His head snapped toward her, gold eyes blazing through the blood and sweat. "Annie." His voice cracked across the room, raw, desperate, commanding. "Let her out. Now." The words hit her like a spark to dry tinder. Her wolf, silent for so long, beaten down, ashamed, heard him. Heard the man who'd never once called her wildness ugly. Heard the alpha who'd held her through heat without taking, who'd bled for her without asking for repayment, who'd looked at her like her strength was something to love, not tame. Something inside Annie snapped. Her wolf exploded free. The shift ripped through her in a single blinding surge. Bones cracked and reformed in a heartbeat. Fur, golden as moonlit wheat, burst across her skin. Muscles coiled with power she'd forgotten she had. The chains shattered, iron links flying like shrapnel as her wolf's strength tore through the wards like paper. She landed on 4 paws, golden-furred, eyes blazing amber gold, larger than she'd ever felt, every inch of her vibrating with raw, unshackled fury. Drevek froze mid-stride, knife still raised, face draining of color. Annie's wolf didn't hesitate. She launched, powerful hind legs propelling her across the stone in one bound, and slammed into him full force. They crashed together, snarling, rolling across the floor in a tangle of fur and limbs. Drevek shifted instinctively. Grey wolf, bigger, heavier, but she was faster, sharper, fueled by 2 years of rage he'd tried to bury. He snapped at her throat. She twisted, teeth sinking into his shoulder instead. He howled, pain and shock, and swiped with claws that raked her flank. She felt the sting, but didn't flinch. Her wolf laughed inside her head, fierce, free, alive. She feinted left, drawing his lunge, then struck right, teeth clamping around his foreleg. Drevek howled again, shifting back to human in panic, the pain too sharp to hold form. Annie pressed her advantage, paws slamming down on his chest, pinning him flat. Her jaws hovered at his throat, close enough to feel his pulse hammering against her teeth. Drevek stared up at her, eyes wide, terrified, seeing for the first time what he'd tried to break. "Please," he gasped. "Annie." She didn't kill him. Instead, she channeled the moonbloom light, gold flaring from her fur, pouring into him like fire through ice, not healing, draining, siphoning the twisted shifter strength he'd used to hurt her, to control her. His body convulsed, color leaching from his skin, muscles slackening, wolf essence fading until he was just a man, small and ordinary and afraid. Drevek gasped, eyes widening as his strength ebbed. What are you?" Annie shifted back, human again, hands glowing on his chest. "I'm what you tried to break, and I'm done running." He slumped, weak, human, broken, eyes glassy with defeat. Across the chamber, Aiden had pinned Vera, claws at the Lord's throat, black fur rippling as he fought to hold his shift. Annie rose, light still pouring from her hands, brighter now, star-like, and stepped toward them. Vera laughed, bloodied, ragged. "Too late, little Bloom. The right—" Annie cut him off. She placed her hands on Aiden's shoulders, palms flat, fingers digging in just enough to feel his heartbeat thundering under her touch. The contact ignited something raw between them. Gold light flared from her skin, bright, searing, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. It poured into Aiden, merging with the black shadow of his alpha strength. Moonlight and midnight, healing and fury. The two forces twisted together. Annie gasped as the power ripped through her, draining, pulling, like her veins were being turned inside out. Her knees buckled. Aiden caught her elbows, holding her upright, his own body shaking as the merged light flooded into him. Vera screamed, high, inhuman, as the backlash hit. His twisted magic, years of forced rites, stolen packs, bound wolves, rebounded like a whip cracking back on itself. The runes on the altar cracked, glowing lines fracturing like glass. Vera's fur shed in patches, his claws retracted against his will, his body convulsed, muscles seizing, bones grinding as the stolen power was torn out of him. Annie felt it too, the drain pulling harder, deeper. Her vision tunneled, black spots danced at the edges. Sweat poured down her face, her arms trembled violently. She was emptying herself, every drop of moonbloom light she had left, into Aiden, into the bond, into the land that had been choking under Vera's control. The chamber shook. The air hummed, low, electric, like the world itself was exhaling after holding its breath. Vera collapsed, human again, ordinary, mortal. His eyes rolled back, his chest heaved once, twice, then stilled. Just a man who'd stolen too much and finally paid the price. The light dimmed. Annie swayed. Aiden caught her fully now, arms banding around her waist, pulling her against his chest. His own breathing was ragged. Blood still seeped from reopened cuts, but the worst of his wounds had sealed under her touch. She sagged into him, forehead to his collarbone, legs giving out. The drain left her hollow, dizzy, cold, like someone had scooped out everything inside her. Aiden sank to his knees with her, holding her close, one hand cradling the back of her head, the other pressed to her back like he could keep her from slipping away. "Annie," he whispered, voice cracked. "You didn't have to." "I did." Her words came out thin, trembling. "I chose to. I chose you, Aiden." He buried his face in her hair. A shudder ran through him, not pain, nor exhaustion, relief, awe, love so fierce it hurt to feel. The chamber fell quiet. The wolves, Aiden's loyal ones, circled the edges, heads low, eyes on their alpha and the woman who'd just saved them all. No howls, no victory cries, just silence, heavy with what had almost been lost. Annie lifted her head, slow, shaky, and met Aiden's eyes. They were still gold-rimmed, still burning, but softer now. "You came for me," she said. He cupped her face, thumbs brushing her cheeks, wiping away blood and tears she hadn't noticed. "I will always come for you," he murmured, the words laced with something possessive that made her stomach flip. "No matter how far you run, no matter what stands between us, I will always come for you." She leaned in, forehead to his again, and felt the bond settle between them, warm, steady, unbreakable, not forced by right, not chained by magic, just two people who'd chosen each other in the dark. They stayed like that, kneeling in the blood and dust, until the first loyal wolf nudged Aiden's shoulder with its muzzle. A quiet reminder. The citadel was theirs now. Vera's guards had fallen. The surviving ones had fled or surrendered. Aiden exhaled, long, steady, then rose, pulling Annie up with him. She leaned heavily on his arm. He didn't let her go. "It's over," he said quietly. Annie looked around, at the cracked altar, at Vera's broken body, at the wolves watching them with steady, trusting eyes. "Come home with me," Aiden whispered into her ear. Annie smiled. They walked out together, hand in hand, into the dawn light breaking over the citadel. The wolves followed, silent guardians. Behind them, the old rite lay shattered. Ahead, the land waited, ready to bloom again. And Annie, wolf awake, heart full, no longer running, stepped into it beside the man who'd taught her she could be wild and loved at the same time. Weeks later, Silver Pine Hold stood rebuilt. Banners of deep green and gold fluttered in the mountain wind. The packs gathered in the great courtyard, loyal ones who'd come when Aiden called, and others who'd heard the truth of Vera's fall and chosen to see for themselves. Aiden stood on the low dais at the center, no crown, no armor, just a clean linen shirt, scarred hands, and Annie beside him, fingers laced tightly with his. He looked out over the assembled shifters, some in human form, some half-shifted, eyes glowing with cautious hope. "I abdicate," he said. His voice carried clear and steady across the courtyard. "Power chained me once. It chained my father. It chained too many of you. The packs are mending, not because I forced them, but because they were allowed to breathe again. Choose your own alphas. Choose your own paths. Be free." Silence fell first, thick, stunned. Then murmurs rose. Shock, confusion, then something softer. Gratitude, relief. A few wolves dipped their heads, others shifted back. To human, tears on their faces. Aiden stepped down from the dais, hand never leaving Annie's, and walked away from the throne without looking back. They found a glade at the edge of the Valewood, small cabin built from fallen pine, wildflowers already pushing up through the grass around it. Annie opened a healing sanctuary in the clearing beside the cabin. Moonbloom light flowed from her hands now, steady, gentle, no longer hidden or drained. Shifters traveled from distant packs, some limping, some scarred in body or spirit, and left lighter. She mended wounds, eased old pains, helped wolves find balance instead of control. Word spread, the Moonbloom was free, and so was her gift. Aiden guided the young shifters who came seeking him, teaching them control and strength. He smiled more, quiet, surprised laughs that made Annie's heart turn over every time. But the nights were theirs. The first full moon after the citadel, Annie woke to the silver light pouring through the open window. Aiden was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed, shirtless, watching her with that steady, burning gaze she'd come to crave. She felt it before she saw it, the simmer under her skin, the low hum in her chest. Not the frantic crest of before, the desperate, fever-driven heat that had terrified her. This was different, slower, deeper. Aiden's nostrils flared, his eyes darkened, pupils blowing wide, but he didn't move. "You're awake," he said softly. She sat up slowly. The sheet fell away. She didn't cover herself. His breath caught. He reached out, slow, careful, and brushed his knuckles along her cheek. She leaned into the touch. "I want you, Aiden. Just you." His eyes fluttered closed for one heartbeat. When they opened again, they were molten, gold rimmed with black, raw with everything he'd held back for months. "Annie, are you sure?" She answered by crawling into his lap, knees bracketing his hips, hands sliding up his chest, feeling the scars under her palms, feeling his heart hammer beneath them. "I've never been more sure." He groaned and kissed her. Slow this time. Deep. Like he was memorizing every second, every taste. His hands slid to her waist, gentle at first, then firmer, pulling her closer until there was no space left between them. She felt him pressing against her core through the thin fabric of his pants. She rocked once, slow, deliberate, and he bucked up into her with a choked sound, fingers digging into her hips. "Gods," he rasped against her mouth. "You're going to ruin me." "That's the plan." She tugged at his pants. He helped her, lifting his hips, shoving them down. He lifted her effortlessly, strong hands under her thighs, and guided her down slowly, carefully, watching her face the whole time. She gasped as he filled her, until he was seated deep, both of them trembling. Aiden's head fell back against the headboard, eyes squeezed shut, jaw clenched, like he was fighting not to lose control. "Annie, you feel..." She rocked, small, testing, and pleasure sparked through both of them. He groaned, hands flexing on her hips, holding her still for one heartbeat. "Wait, just let me feel you." She stilled, forehead to his, breathing together. His hands slid up her back, mapping every line, every scar, every place she'd been hurt and healed. When he opened his eyes again, they were glowing in the dark. "I love you," he whispered. "I've loved you since the market, since you trusted a stranger with your life, since you trusted me to hold you through your heat. I love you, Annie. All of you." Tears slipped down her cheeks, happy this time. She kissed him, soft, slow, pouring everything into it. "I love you too," she whispered against his lips. "I love the man who fought for me, who taught me my wildness isn't ugly. It's beautiful. I love you, Aiden. All of you." He groaned, quiet, reverent, and started to move. Slow at first, long, deep rolls of his hips that made her gasp every time he bottomed out. His hands roamed, cupping her, thumbs brushing her until she arched, sliding down to grip her, guiding her rhythm. The pace built. He flipped them until she was under him, legs wrapped around his waist. His mouth found her throat, kissing, nipping, growling her name like a prayer. "Annie, let me feel you," she shattered, clenching around him, crying out his name as pleasure ripped through her in waves. Aiden followed seconds later, hips stuttering, burying himself deep with a broken groan, spilling inside her. They clung together, sweaty, trembling, foreheads pressed, hearts hammering in sync. He lifted his head just enough to look at her, eyes soft now, gold-rimmed and shining in the moonlight. His thumb brushed a damp strand of hair from her cheek. "In the market, when you grabbed my arm, I thought you were desperate." The corner of his mouth curved. "Turns out, you just knew how to find your way home in the dark." Annie smiled. She pressed her lips to the scar at the corner of his mouth. "My mother used to say that when you're lost, find the brightest thing and hold on." She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. "Turns out, it wasn't a star I needed. It was you." He kissed her again, soft, slow, sealing something permanent between them. Outside, wolves slept in the moonlit grass. The land breathed easy. And Annie, wolf awake, gift flowing freely, no longer running, was finally, completely home. Where are you watching from? Let's meet in the comments. I love hearing your feedback, and if you'd like to support me, please subscribe. It's free, and it helps more people find this story.